What would you give to know the secrets behind the characteristics of online businesses that receive huge valuation multiples? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you that for free because I just got off a call with our vetting team, and they're the team that is directly responsible for assigning valuations to the online businesses that come through on our marketplace. And they know the difference between what leads to a high valuation versus a low valuation. And most sellers, they only learn about this once they enter the vetting phase, once they're ready to sell. And that is so unfortunate because a lot of these sellers, they get incredibly valuable insight about what they could have done 12 months ago or 24 months ago to their business to have multiplied their valuation. And this is often the difference between tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like maybe they could have monetized their email list or their social media channels, or maybe they could have applied for a patent or a trademark. So instead of me telling you these points from the vetting team, I figured it'd be best to have the vetting team on so that they can tell you directly about their insights and what they wish sellers knew prior to entering the vetting phase about what could maximize their valuations and lead to the smoothest valuation process to get them listed for sale as quickly as possible. So let's kick this off with several members of the team just introducing themselves and talking about their tips.
I'm Ryan. I'm one of the vetting supervisors here at Empire Flippers, and I'm in Medellin, Colombia. Been here for about 3 years.
Nice. I'll go next. I'm Brian. I'm a vetting advisor here. I'm actually based in Belfast, Northern Ireland, but for the last year, I've been kind of traveling around as well, which is one of the beauties of working online.
I'm Francisco, also a vetting advisor. I'm currently in Malaysia, but I've been traveling around Asia recently, and I've also got to travel a bit around Europe earlier. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
My name is Keith. I am a vetting advisor here, and I am based out of St. Lucia in the Caribbean.
My name is Mateo. I'm also a vetting advisor, and I've been in South Korea for the past 2 years. This is actually my last week in South Korea, but it's been a great ride. So like Brian said, one of the perks of working online.
I'm Adam. I'm also a vetting advisor, and I'm typically based in Thailand, but have come back to the UK for a couple of months just to touch base with family.
What actually happens during the vetting process? So when a seller decides that they want to sell their business and comes to us to prepare it for the sale, can you tell the audience about what that process actually looks like?
When a business first submits, the very first thing that we're looking for is if it's a good fit for our marketplace, and if we have a buyer pool that's interested in that business model. So we value a very specific type of business, and we have a buyer pool that's interested in specific type of business. That's mainly businesses that are digital, that most of their earnings come online. So that's e-commerce, content sites earning via affiliate marketing, digital service businesses, SaaS businesses. All of the revenue is mostly earned via online. So we do get a decent amount of submissions, don't actually make it into our vetting process, not because they're bad businesses, but because it's not a business model that we specialize in. For example, we had someone submit a dog breeding business. They submitted a nice looking P&L, a good business model, and I thought the business actually looked really cool. However, it's just not something that our buyers are looking to take on. The buyers, in order for them to purchase that type of business, they would have to take on a dog shelter, caring for these pets, a physical location. Most of the assets that we have listed on our marketplace are digital. And the beauty of it is that our buyer pool can purchase it from anywhere in the world. So first, when a business first submits, we have to do a filtering process if it doesn't fit our model or our target market. If it does, that's kind of my job, is kind of making sure it's a good fit. If I determine it's a good fit, then I assign it to a vetting advisor, and then they kind of take over the process of helping the seller to prepare to list on our marketplace and prepare for a sale.
What do you think are the biggest factors that contribute to high valuation multiples, whether for online businesses in general or any specific business models such as e-commerce, websites, or SaaS?
A couple of things that we look for is the net profit trend. So if the business is trending up, is going to tend to have a higher valuation as opposed to if it was trending down. Also, want to look at the quality of the products. So whatever the Amazon star rating is, that really matters. And also one other thing is traffic diversity. Where are these businesses getting their traffic from, and how diverse are those traffic streams?
In addition to some of the more objective metrics such as star ratings and reviews, do you look at other subjective measures such as how well branded a business is?
We do look at the brand. We'll look at the star rating on Amazon, and also we want to know, is this like a unique brand, or is it just something that, you know, they private label that any other business can also start up? So a unique brand and growing a following around that brand definitely does contribute to the valuation.
I was going to also add some legal protection around the brand is helpful as well. So if you have trademarks to protect your brand, if you're selling on Amazon brand registry, that's a big contributor to help build a moat around your business.
I just wanted to give a more high-level trend that goes across every business type that we have. And I feel like there's kind of 4 key points. Upwards trend in revenue, upwards trend in profitability, generally the age of the business, and outsourcing of all of the operations. Across all of our business types, those are the 4 key things that will really help your valuation. In each business type, then there are certain things that will impact those 4 kind of categories, but I think that's the 4 most important things.
So regarding an increase in revenue and profitability being a factor that's important in high valuation multiples, there are outside factors such as increases in shipping costs or manufacturing costs that can increase expenses and reduce profitability. So how does that affect the valuation?
One thing that may be worth noting is our valuations are based on empirical data that we have internally of how similar businesses have performed historically on our marketplace and how those prices multiples have been moving. I think sometimes it's unavoidable that there will be manufacturing cost increases, and these will take a toll on profitability in the short term. But ultimately, the drivers of quality of a business, which are a unique brand, a lean product portfolio, good net profit, these fundamental underlying factors, which I think Brian alluded to, are one of like the biggest like relative differentiators between brands. So maybe you may be affected in the short term by these manufacturing cost swings, but ultimately a lot of the relative impact on the valuation will be based on brand quality, how lean your portfolio is, how passive your business is, these fundamental factors. So I think in these kind of circumstances, it's important to focus on these things, which are more in your control.
That was a specific example to e-commerce. What do the trends look like for people who don't have physical product businesses, such as websites, KDP, or SaaS businesses?
I feel like the trends are the same if you remove your final point there on like your supply chain, essentially. If you remove that and just focus on trend in revenue, trend in profitability, potentially a little bit of the age of the business, because the older businesses, the likelihood that it is a stronger business, and the outsourcing of the operations. I think that does just go across all categories, but it's so hard to just do like even to drill down from those 4 points. It's hard to go even further without knowing which specific one we're talking about.
You mentioned the age of the business being a factor in the valuation multiple. What's important about a business's age?
Age kind of shows if a business has been around for a while, it's likely going to continue to be around. You know, if a business has been around for 2 months, who knows if it's going to be around in the next 2 months. If the business has been around for 6 years, then it likely means it's been running at a profitable level. Maybe not for all of those 6 years, but if it's been running that long, it's just a stronger position than if something has just very recently been started up.
How important is it to establish business protections such as trademarks or patents prior to entering the vetting phase?
I would say protect a trademark, so for your brand name especially, and if you are selling on Amazon or a platform which has its own form of brand protection, to register for that as well. So brand registry is usually what it is for Amazon. And that is something that a lot of buyers will, and a lot of time, be non-negotiable, because if they look at your business and they think it's a good product or a good business, but they could just start it themselves straight away without having to actually spend the money to purchase the business, then a lot of people would think, why would they not do that? Where's the value in actually purchasing your business? Whereas if you have that legal protection, that adds to it. In addition to the legal protection is just the general reputation of your business. So if you have products which are ranking very well, or if you're selling, say, a website and you have keywords or a domain which has got a high domain ranking and is ranking very well, that's a form of protection, because somebody isn't going to be able to immediately create a new business and have those rankings. That's something that has had work put into it and has an amount of value which isn't able to be copycatted straight away.
Is there a trend you've seen with businesses that receive lower valuation multiples?
One thing which isn't just say the opposite of what we've already spoken about would be how much time as the seller you're actually putting into it. So it does, to be honest, link back to what Brian was saying about how much of your business is outsourced. So not just in terms of your supply chain, but also in terms of your time. People want to work on the business rather than in the business. So being able to say that you only work a few hours a week as opposed to working a full-time job will definitely help with the sellability.
What can businesses do that help for a quick and smooth vetting process and get them quickly listed on the marketplace?
I can once again summarize something that will help overall across every single business type, and that is having a strong understanding of their own expenses. If there's one thing that we do, we verify revenue in every single P&L. So even if they come into the process not knowing the revenue, ideally they do know the revenue, but if they come in not even knowing the revenue, we have various methods in order to verify their revenue. So we can get that done. The one thing that we cannot verify is their expenses. If they don't know their expenses, there's nothing we can do to tease those out. So as long as a business understands its own expenses, they will be able to go through the process faster than someone who needs to then go and figure all that out from the moment that they submit. So I would say 100% that's the highest impact thing that someone can do before coming in, is understand their expenses, ideally over the last 24 months, minimum 12 months.
Especially for some business models, is having good analytics for a business. So you want to have Google Analytics installed on your business for a while. If you're doing a SaaS business, you want to have a good dashboard software or analytics software to give us a good idea of how your business is performing, and that can in turn help us get a lot of information that can be used to market the business and increase its sellability. So Google Analytics and just any kind of analytics for other business models really helps. If you're an FBA business, and you use software like Sellerboard or Seller Legend, and you have those integrations well made, that can also help speed up the process significantly.
There are a list of software like Sellerboard for Amazon FBA, ProfitWell for SaaS, all this kind of stuff. Maybe we can provide a list of software that we've come across that kind of helps out, because if they're planning on selling their business in 6 months or 12 months time, them having that software in place as soon as possible, it's just going to make our life so much easier. Mine and Ryan's job in the 5-minute check, if we got a Sellerboard P&L, we can see the exact net profit of their business, whether it meets our requirements. I'm sure the guys can testify that if we have a Sellerboard P&L, we can probably get them a valuation much quicker because we don't have to go through our process. I'm sure it's the same with ProfitWell and all these other softwares out there that track profitability. You'd be surprised how many sellers don't actually know how much profit their business is making. And obviously with that software, they get a much clearer idea, obviously.
Is there a difference in how we assign valuations across different business models, such as SaaS businesses?
Difficult to give a very broad answer to that, just because the SaaS space is so diverse. A lot of times, like, adjustments to valuation methodologies need to be made a little bit on the fly. I just think it varies a lot by business. Generally, we're looking for businesses that have low churn rates. We're looking for businesses with subscriber growth that are fairly passive, that show that that's retaining its customers, and it's in a good space, in a good non-saturated space with a unique product. But it's very particular to the style of SaaS business that we're looking at.
So absolutely echo all of Francisco's points there. I think To answer the question, is there a different sort of style of approaching how to value a business, or what makes a SaaS business different is purely just in how the revenue is generated. In a typical SaaS business, a revenue is subscribed. So if you have 100 people subscribed, likely, according to churn, those 100 people will be paying again next month. Whereas if you're selling a product on Amazon and you sell 100 products in 1 month, you have to go and sell those 100 products again in the next month to get the same level of revenue. So that's where it gets a little different in terms of valuing a business. The recurring revenue is definitely of higher value than the non-recurring revenue. But like Francisco says, it changes for every single type of SaaS business.
Is there anything else that you wish sellers knew coming into this process?
The more responsive you are and available you are, the quicker we can get you up. I think one of the big advantages of using us as a broker is we've got systems in place to make the process go a lot smoother and a lot quicker than if you were doing it on your own, but there is still an element of seller input involved, particularly when it comes to expenses. So if you're just about to go on holiday, or maybe you have something coming up, it might be better to discuss with a seller advisor when the best time to submit would be. We definitely understand that things come up, and when you're running a business as well as trying to sell it, we can do our best to work around you. But particularly if you do have big events coming up, or you're not going to be able to get back to us, that will definitely increase the amount of time spent in vetting.
Just to piggyback off of that, it's something that I think that people often don't realize, like, is going to be part of their process with Empire Flippers in general. That kind of responsiveness is really required, not just in the vetting process. And I know that this is just about the vetting process, but they're going to have to do it in migrations. They're going to have to do it when they're on sale on the marketplace. People are going to be asking them questions, especially if your business receives a lot of unlocks and people are really interested. Someone's going to be reaching out to you all the time. So I think that setting aside, just space in your calendar where you can be like, all right, I need to check my email to see if someone from Empire Flippers has reached me, once a day or once every 2 days at a minimum, really will help make everything go a lot smoother. And it's going to be a better experience for you as a seller ultimately, just because, the longer that it typically takes, the more time things can come up where it seems like the process is delayed. Just because at the beginning of every month, we need to sort of update the P&L with new revenue. We're going to have to ask you for new expenses. That's going to happen anyway at the start of every month that your business, even if it's on the marketplace. But when that happens in the vetting process, because you've taken too long to respond and you were just about to get that final valuation, but now we can't do it because we don't have the expenses, you have to go in there and now the valuation has changed. Those sellers typically have a little bit of a worse experience. And so being responsive really helps. And it's something that really is just going to make your life easier at the end of the day.
Yeah, just to piggyback off Mateo's piggyback, I think another point to make is motivation. Like a seller, the biggest thing in vetting, especially over the last few months, that I'm sure that the advisors can agree with me on, is unresponsive sellers and how difficult it is to actually get information out of them. And I think those sellers that are actually motivated and they have a reason why they want to sell their business, those are the guys that speed through, because they don't get cold feet halfway through. They respond to all the emails. They know, oh, I'm going to sell this business for 500K and invest in real estate or start another project, or I'm going to retire, whatever it is. Those are the ones that get things done. Whether if they don't have a motivation, or they're kind of on the fence, or maybe I'm going to hold on to it, maybe it's a good idea to keep it, or they don't have any goals for after they've exited their business. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I find those are the ones that you have to chase up 3 or 4 times, and then they're like, oh, I'll get back to it in a week, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So I think if they're motivated, that's a huge point for getting through the process much quicker.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a collaborative process. And I think, as Adam said earlier, we've seen every business model thousands of times each. So we have very set processes that help move things very, very quickly. But it's certainly cooperative. We'll do a lot of the work, but we do need some work input from the seller too.
Do you get any pushback from sellers about valuation multiples as far as what a seller expects their valuation will be versus what you present to them?
One thing I like to say is the list price is not always the same as the sales price. So like you mentioned, sometimes, there are pushback from sellers. Sometimes they have an arbitrary number that they like to sell for, and that's okay. But, sometimes they'll want to get a higher valuation than what we present to them. That's completely okay. But one thing I want them to understand is that when a buyer looks at the business, sometimes they're going to be a little less liberal with, let's just say, add backs, or let's just say the pricing period. Sometimes they're going to want to stretch it out to a 12-month, even if the business is listed at a 9-month. So just want these sellers to understand that whatever price they list at isn't necessarily the price that they're going to sell for.
To do another piggyback, just wanted to say absolutely, and I can promise you, and I can promise on the behalf of everybody else, we're not ever going to try and give you a lowball offer. We want to list your business for as much as we think that is reasonable and that it can sell for. So typically, the pushback that I get is a seller comes on the marketplace, and let's say that I provide them with a 43x multiple for their business, but they say that someone with a business that's similar on the marketplace is going for a 53x. There are so many different factors that we've already talked about on this call that go into each individual business that could have, contributed to that 53x multiple for the other business that may just not be right for this business. And so, like Francisco said earlier, a lot of what we do, especially when using all of the tools that we have at our disposal to create valuations, is based on market data, trends, and all sorts of things that we have accumulated over years and years of selling businesses and watching buyers on our marketplace. So the multiple that you get, feel free to let us know if you don't like it or if you think it can be adjusted, and we're happy to have that conversation with you. Sometimes we can move it up a little bit, and sometimes we may need to, stick with what it is or meet in the middle. But typically, the multiple that you get is really just our 100%, genuine best offer based on all sorts of different factors that we've just discussed. And, we want to make sure that you are not leaving any money on the table. And so we are always giving you the offer that we think is the best, the most fair, and the most reasonable for actually getting your business sold on the marketplace. Because, like Keith said, we don't want your business to sit there for months and months, not receiving a full list price offer because buyers just don't think that it is valued correctly.
That's a really good point. As a brokerage, our incentives are aligned with that of sellers. Like, we want to sell businesses for as high as possible. But if we know the realities of what actually sells, because we work with the buyer side. So we want to both sell it for the highest valuation possible, but also as quickly as possible. In other words, be able to justify the price that we listed at.
That also brings us to an important point of sellability versus profitability, right? So what we were talking about initially was how profitable these businesses are, and what trend you're on and what that's going to look for your valuation. But at the same time, the sellability of your business is almost equally, if not more important than the profitability. And so to kind of discuss that is that we'll have someone submit, if you have a business that requires a lot of customer service, let's say, and you're spending 40 hours a week replying to emails and answering phone calls from your customers, it's probably best that you outsource that to a virtual assistant that can handle that work. Now, now when you go to fill out your P&L when you submit with Empire Flippers, it's a plus. Like, if I look at a P&L that someone submits, the more expenses you have in there, the better for me. That's what I'm looking for. Meaning that most of those expenses mean that you're running a quality business that's a turnkey business that can be handed over to a buyer. So if you were to outsource your customer service that you're spending 40 hours a week on to a virtual assistant that you're paying a monthly salary to, then adding that salary into the P&L, although it lowers your profitability, it's going to increase your sellability, which might actually even get you a higher valuation, right? So the same thing goes for maybe a 3PL. If you're fulfilling some of your inventory from your basement, because it doesn't take that much work, you're at your house anyway, but you just need to drive down to the UPS or FedEx store or to send a few orders every once in a while. it's kind of hard to value what that might cost a buyer. So if you were to outsource that to a 3PL that just takes care of those for you, yes, it's going to lower your profitability, but it's going to increase your sellability, which might increase your multiple, which might get you a higher valuation overall. So when you're working on your business, it's important to realize that the more you outsource, the more you turn it into a business and not a job, the better it's going to be for the day that you want to exit. Also, something important to discuss about that is I think what we get the most questions is add backs. And a lot of sellers want to know what's an add back, what's not an add back. An add back would be something that we feel that's discretionary, that's not really necessary to continue to operate the business. Now, the VA expense that we just discussed, I would feel that that is necessary. If you want to take over the business as is, you need that VA. If you don't have that VA, you're gonna have to spend 40 hours a week sending emails and answering phone calls, which decreases the sellability of the business. So we'll have some sellers submit and say, hey, I'd like to add back this virtual assistant. I'd like to add back this 3PL. It's not required. I ran the business before without it. And then we'll constantly tell the seller, hey, look, this is good. You want this expense in the P&L. You want this 3PL to carry over to a new buyer. You want this virtual assistant to carry over to a new buyer, because that's going to increase the likelihood of you actually exiting this business. So an add back is something that is discretionary, that's not necessarily required. A good example is like, if you launch an FBA business and you need to make photos or maybe buy some sample products of those products, they're kind of these one-time expenses that a buyer is getting all the benefit and not needing to spend anything on those photos or any of those samples that you spent on. We can add that back easy. And our guys are really good at determining what's an add back and what's not. And all we're really doing is preparing you for when you're having a conversation with a buyer for that process to go as smooth as possible, right? We don't want them pushing back on if this is an add back and this is not. We're trying to get you to the finish line as quickly as possible. Something that I would say that some people think is an add back that we don't consider an add back would be something like a marketing or a PPC agency or Facebook ad agency, right? If you're spending money on having someone to outsource your Facebook ads or outsource your pay per click advertising on Amazon, more than likely you're doing that because they're increasing your bottom line. So although it's, again, let's say if you're spending $500 a month on a PPC agency, but then your profitability goes up because you spent $500, well, then it's reflected on the bottom line. If we were to remove the agency from the P&L, if you were to stop using them, your profitability may go down, and which would decrease your valuation. So we like to keep those things in, especially if that agency would be willing to continue working on with a new owner. So those are the things that we get a lot of questions on as well that I think is good feedback for a seller.
Are you noticing anything different regarding valuations in the state of the current market?
Valuations haven't changed that much. Maybe buyers are a little bit tighter with what they're willing to make an offer on. So maybe the money and the buyers are a little bit tighter. They're a little bit more specific on what they're looking for, which is all the more reason for when you're running your business to do all the things that we're talking about, because it's going to help you prepare for an exit. When it's a seller's market, there's a lot of free flowing cash and people are just kind of picking up things, and you may submit and we can just kind of put everything we can help you piece everything together and you may get an exit pretty quickly. But on the other hand, if it's a buyer's market, they're very specific with what they're looking for. And it may take a little bit longer for us to put together that P&L for you to get more offers on that business.
All right, well, I hope you found that helpful as far as what you can do with your online business over the next 6, 12, 24 months to really maximize your business valuation. And if you found this helpful, or if you'd like to hear from other members about the insights that they have, about what they wish you knew, about how to achieve a life-changing exit, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. So thanks for watching and see you next time.